When a novel is turned into a video game or a video game is turned into a movie, typically the result is less than stellar. For every Lord of the Rings, there's 20 Doom movies. Yet Metro 2033 manages to be not only one of the best novel-turned-video games ever, but it also manages to be one of the best story-driven first-person shooters of all time. Why is this? Well, that's what we're going to be looking at in this Metro 2033 analysis. It's rare to have a scenario like Metro 2033's video game. Not only do the developers respect the subject material, but the author behind the subject material is on board with the video game. This is not something that happens in a Hollywood movie. These are people that want to make the best video game possible with the best story possible. And I'm sure their breakout success with Metro 2033 made them ecstatic, but that all came because they made, first and foremost, a very good video game. But there's more going on than just wanting to make a good video game. Novels translate to video games much better than one might expect. At the beginning of the game, you wake up in sort of a small closet space. There's lots to look at. Pictures of the outside world before the nuclear apocalypse. Made clear that Artyom is collecting these immediately right at the start. A guitar to your left that you can physically interact with and play, showing that maybe the main character plays the guitar. In a movie, you can't convey these things in such an atmospheric world. They might have the main actor holding these pictures for a brief moment, or maybe playing the guitar before moving on to the next scene, but that's a very different experience than physically standing in the room, being able to look anywhere you want to. What's more amazing about this is that you don't need to read the novel to understand all the details being put into the game. Those families sitting around a fire huddling to stay warm. Russians drinking crappy vodka by their makeshift bar. The relative safety of the metro compared to the harsh outside world. These are all things you could tell were in the novel without reading the novel. The game is staying incredibly true to the subject material, and doing it in such an immersive way that you can't help but just take a moment to breathe it all in. But it's not only this world that transfers into video game form well, but the entire arc of the story. Every chapter of every book can be broken down into a level of a video game. This works much better than a movie, which only has a few hours to convey the entire story. A video game has much longer, and it has more interactive ups and downs caused by the player himself. At the beginning of a level, you'll be introduced to a new character. You'll slowly be brought up over time until you reach a climax. That character will meet his demise, or you'll say bye to that character, to load into the next level, showing you a new section of the world with a brand new host of characters. And some of these characters may come back, but each one of these levels serves as a chapter in the novel, and every single level is more extravagant than the last. But there's natural pacing to a good novel. It won't be yelling at you, turning the dial to 11 like a video game like, say, Call of Duty does. Every chapter of this novel, or every level of this video game, has its own sort of character arc with a climax that could be seen as an entire video game on its own. And most other games only do this once or twice, but Metro 2033 does this constantly due to the subject material, and eventually the end climax is more extravagant than all the others before combined. This translates to video games amazingly well. At no point does the player feel tired of the game. When there's downtime, the world is so interesting you want to look around and take in the new characters. When there's a climax, there's so much going on that it demands your attention, but it doesn't do this for so long that you stop caring and get pulled out of the game. But with every bit of success, there is some luck. The luck of Metro 2033 being that the subject material transferred over to what was popular in video games at that time. You have a story with a post-apocalyptic setting in a part of the world that's notoriously hostile with lots of makeshift weapons. Two things were very popular back in 2010 that this translates over to naturally: survival games and first-person shooters. Thankfully, Metro 2033 didn't buy into survival game tropes. They still wanted to make a good game. They didn't want to turn the novel into a generic survival game for a quick buck. The constant barrage of atmospheric cues keep you immersed in the game, even throughout the gunplay. Aside from a standard revolver, the first gun you get in the game is something called the Bastard Gun. A gun with a sliding clip where you can see the bullets through it that overheats if you fire half the magazine. This reinforces that this is a hostile world limited on supplies. Yet at the same time, the gunplay still felt satisfying and rewarding. This was still a first-person shooter, and the gunplay needed to feel good. No game can rely purely on its story, especially if it wants to be a shooter. And these sort of small details apply to the entire game. A flashlight that doesn't use batteries, instead uses a hand crank recharge tool. Having to constantly watch your ammo to make sure you don't run out. Having the possibility of swapping over to military grade ammo, which is usable but is also your currency in the game. Sure, this ammo did more damage, but you were literally shooting your money away. It's an act of desperation. and this really encourages the more survival aspect of the game. But at the same time, this is not DayZ, this is more of a linear first-person shooter with survival mechanics. This game has a little bit of everything for everyone that likes shooters. If you like survival games, you're probably going to like Metro, but if you like games more like Half-Life, you're probably going to like Metro. But even though occasionally people make jokes about this game being a watered-down stalker, which is not true, the game doesn't really hold your hand, especially if you choose the Ranger Hardcore mode. Difficulty settings are a work of art in themselves that a lot of developers don't do right. Typically the difficulty settings go from you can't die to normal difficulty, which is too easy for anyone that actually plays video games, to hard difficulty, which feels like normal for anyone that plays video games, to downright impossible. And generally the differences between these difficulty modes is little more than enemies just simply doing more damage to you or having more health. They don't get smarter, they don't change, the difficulty mode is artificial. This is not true in Metro 2033. Difficulty modes will change a lot of core mechanics in the game. They restrict the amount of ammo and money you receive. They won't allow you to have recharging health anymore. Things like this greatly change the game, and I know a lot of people that will only play the game on Ranger Hardcore mode, and perhaps that is the best mode for staying true to the original novel. But the option is also there for people that want a more straightforward first-person shooter that enjoy the shooting mechanics a little more than, say, staying true to the survival nature of Metro 2033. But what's really commendable is that they managed to hide this in a way to where it doesn't ruin the game if you play it on the easier difficulty modes that kind of dampen down the survival aspects of the game. It's still Metro 2033 no matter what way you play it. And playing it never gets old. Even the combat has different pacing for every level. This is a world that has many different types of mutants to throw at you, as well as your own fellow humans trying to kill you. And not only that, but you could be fighting deep in the Metro, a claustrophobic space, or you could be fighting in the ruins of Moscow, an open area with mutants all around you. These two spaces are going to play out very differently. They're going to have different enemies. They're going to require different skill sets. They're going to require you to use different guns entirely. The all-out action of a CQB situation fighting against fellow humans in a confined space of the Metro is going to be much, much different than trying to stay alive against a horde of mutants outside in the open space in the ruins of Moscow. You might want to stealth against your fellow humans because you have the ability to do so in that environment, or maybe you want to go loud and simply use a shotgun to take them out one by one. But when a horde of mutants are around, you're probably going to want an automatic to spray down the ones that get closest to you to get to the next bit of cover. Or perhaps you want to hide from the terrifying flying demons that can kill you rather easily. Even the stealth is going to be different in these two situations. And these are only two different types of environments. This is not to mention, say, the library with the horrifying librarians around. Metro 2033 forces you to adapt to the situation around you, but it never changes the core gunplay, making this adaptation not feel like a gimmick, but a true, enjoyable game. And somehow, out of all this ranting, I somehow have not talked about how this game was a benchmark for years. This game is now 9 years old, and it still looks very good to this day. It was a benchmark back in 2010. These guys are ambitious. They want to make a good game with an atmospheric story, but they also want to have good graphics. And every Metro game has looked better than the last. That's not to say the first one looked bad, because again, it still looks good to this day, 9 years later. Metro took a more realistic art style to their game, and I believe this is the correct choice for a more survival-based game. Everything they did in development had a reason behind it, and they were really lucky with the subject material they got. It was the perfect combination of a great world that transferred over to video games better than anything else I've seen. But if movies have taught us anything, this is not enough to make something good. The artist needs to be behind this work, and the people making the work need to be truly behind making a great piece of art. When you don't have this, instead you get things like Doom the movie. If you follow me on Twitch, you know I went back and streamed through Metro 2033 last week. Believe it or not, I had only played it once on launch, and going back to it today, I was still having a ton of fun. Linear story-driven shooters are a rare breed. Shooters now are a sea of battle royales and hero shooters. We don't see things like Metro 2033 pop up too often. So this game was a real treat to go back and play, and it didn't disappoint me at all. What I remembered was pretty much how it played out. I still loved it. So with that said, I guess we move on to Metro Last Light, and that'll be the next video I focus on. Thank all you guys for watching this video. If you want to join me in playing Metro Last Slide, check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/JerrickForGamingDragon. If you want to help me out on Patreon, you can see my Patreon on screen right here, and there's also a link down below in the video information. I say this every video, but a huge thanks goes out to my supporters. I would not be able to pay rent and bills without you guys. This includes people on Patreon, my Twitch subs, all of you simply watching the video without ad blocks being turned on. I wouldn't be able to make this content otherwise, and it's great to know you guys like it enough to support me. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you see me over on my Twitch, and I will see you for Metro Last Slide analysis.